Hello to any and all who would soon be joining. You know what we need? I think we need some chill, lo-fi music in the background. Lo-fi hip-hop girl. Probably should have did that before we launched the live, but that's okay. Okay, that should be pleasant. This is what I want to respond to. So I'm looking at Pisco and his debate, this little multi-on-one on this live version of Culture War or something from Tim Pool. I am Tim Pool's dad, and I agree with you. This is about the U.S. Constitution. Wait, really? Is that really his dad? Huh. Wait, that's actually funny. I'm Tim Pool's dad, and I agree with you. This is about the U.S. Constitution. Okay.
The outcome was just.
I'm asking if the deportation, if you think.
Well, I mean, it was mistaken, so they conceded that it's a mistake,
Oh,
right?
shit. Wait, I gotta turn on the.
Just to do a mistaken illegal deportation.
I have to turn on the Chrome. Fuck. Pro streamer, by the way. How do I do this shit? One of these. Is it display capture? No, that's not it. That's goofy. I have like a window capture just for Chrome. Where did it go? Oh, okay. I guess it doesn't capture the full window. Alright, whatever. This is what we're here to review. So, Lo-Fi Girl, you're just gonna have to chill for a bit. Alright?
I mean, the actual substantive outcome here is a just outcome. It's like, I don't want the administration.
Whether the outcome was just or not, is
Right.
the action, the mistaken, in your words, mistaken illegal deportation just or not?
It's mildly unjust.
Even if you are right, I'll concede that I think, I ideologically, even though you and I are different on this subject, I do feel like that he didn't get his, due process.
I concede. Let's bring him back, and the first thing that happens when he walks in the door is they turn him back
So I
around.
just want to be sure. You concede that it was unjust and it should be brought back and then put in removal?
No. Stop playing games.
That's what you just said.
I am saying, for the sake of argument, I will no contest your argument and say the end
that's
result.
pussy shit.
Don't
no
know.
contest an argument.
That's-
Actually,
that's-
take
that's-
the
that's
argument.
Fair. I think it's fair.
That's you and.
I think my favorite part of these, anytime it's a tell when you debate Trumples, right? Because they always start from the conclusion of a position, which is that immigrants should be deported, right? And not even illegal necessarily. They're just anti-immigrant in general. They just use illegal as like this kind of a canard to avoid saying out loud what they actually want. If you have to talk the law and the process with them, and they don't have grounds to stand on, they're going to get, indignant, outraged, right? But just circle back to the same point of, well, he's illegal, so he shouldn't be here. And that's all they're going to say. In so many different words, they're going to pretend to be tough on crime, tough on immigration, and they're going to carry that same bravado energy all throughout this debate, but they are never going to contend with what the law actually says. I guarantee it.
Engaging in semantics to change the arguments I
That's
made.
pussy shit.
Hey folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Culture War Debate Podcast Live. This is our first pilot. We got a live studio audience for everybody who's watching at home. We're going to be bringing them up. I encourage heckling, booing, and cheering, which is probably bad news for our friend PC.
You really should not encourage heckling, but whatever. Gracious host.
But it's going to be fun. But we do have some serious issues to debate. And the question of today is, was the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia just or unjust? And should the Trump administration bring him back to this country? And with that being said, I would like to throw it first to the gentleman to my right. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm.
Just a note on this format. If you don't set out if you don't set out defining your terms for what just or unjust necessarily means, you're just going to have different people arguing some opinion with no resolution. It's just because he was illegal, he shouldn't be here. Like, that's going to be their default all the day, all fucking time. Pisco's going to argue, no, it's unjust because there's a law that says you can't deport him to El Salvador, but they deported him there anyway. And then there's a law a Supreme Court ruling says, yo, you got to bring him back. And they're just ignoring that ruling. So the debate's already off to a bad start.
I'm Pisco. I'm a lawyer. I argue on the internet from a left-wing perspective, and I think it's obvious that it was unjust. It was illegal. All right. One of the big problems that conservatives cite with immigration is the fact that it's illegal in the first place. Okay. So if you have a problem with illegal immigration on the basis of its illegality, surely you should have a problem with deporting.
So Pisco's already starting off wrong because he says if you have this problem on the basis of that illegality, conservatives don't have a problem with immigration on the basis of illegality. They just argue from that position to get what they want. They don't like immigration, period. Right? We spend a lot of time, hang on, the Mott. That's the, what's the Mott and Bailey thing? They spend a lot of time safe in the Bailey while we fight in the Mott. I don't know how to analogize that correctly, but that's their concern is just not the illegality of it. They don't want immigrants here, period. They're, viciously scared of brown people. They're viciously scared of anybody they don't see as adequately American. And who gets to be the arbiter of what American is? It's always them. Conservatives are always the defender of what American culture means, regardless of how often they might just be un-American. They get to wear the flag. This isn't their issue. But Pisco is going to... I can tell he's just going to try to be good faith and argue as if it is. But we'll see how it goes.
People illegally, unless you think it was the right thing to do to break the law. Do you think it was the right thing to do to break the law? I'll ask the audience right now. Yeah. So that's just a... People
already shouted yes, off to a great start. Like, they don't care about the law. They care about forcing people out they don't like. They don't want to live... We're in the precipice of some sort of societal calamity here because we live in this country with people who would kill us if they got the chance to.
Collective, I want everyone to notice. You all said you're fine when Trump breaks the law. He admits that he broke the law, and you're cool with it. And they admit that it was against the law to do so. And they promised they're going to do it to U.S. citizens too. You think he's just joking? You think it won't affect you? They've already arrested U.S. citizens, for 10 days without due process. They're lying about where he was near the border. They've deported U.S. children who have cancer. So don't think this won't.
Oh, I didn't even bring this up in my tabs. Yeah, child with brain cancer deported. All mannerisms of fucked up to add to our list of shit. So we've got U.S. citizen being deported. So it's already pretty fucking un-American.
Affect you. And notice what you all just did. You all just said, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's just for someone to be deported illegally. Deported illegally.
Suspend habeas corpus.
So basically, just to finish off.
Do it. Suspend it.
You're willing to say that you want Trump to be a king, that you want him to be a tyrannical fascist. And I would ask you to look yourself in the mirror and really, take a hard look. Is that what you want this country to be?
For 24 All right.
For 24 hours, yes.
We also have, with his opening statement and introduction, this
I want a dictatorship for 24 hours. No, you don't.
gentleman here.
Yeah. Nice to see you all. I'm Will Chamberlain, Senior Counsel at the Article 3 Project.
All right. Yeah.
So I think there are, three core reasons that the outcome here is substantively just. The first is that had the Trump administration gone through the normal process to lift the withholding of removal, this guy would have been removed 100% of the time.
You don't know that, but let's entertain the argument as if that is true, that 100% of the time thing. Just go through the process then, right? If you're going to get that way eventually, no matter what, why are you cheering on violating the process? The process is on your side. Just do the process. Follow due process.
For two core reasons. First, he was found to be a member of MS-13 in earlier court proceedings. Once that
I don't think a court found him to be MS-13. This is all based on hearsay. Apparently from somebody who's not even all that reliable to begin with. It was a police officer who'd had a history of fabricating claims. But there's no proof he was MS-13. Right? A judge saying, the government has alleged he's MS-13 is not proof. That's just hearsay. Well, I don't know if that would be like legal hearsay, but it's not establishing anything. How do we know this guy is MS-13? What is the process? And I think the process we got from the government was he had a Chicago Bulls hat and some tattoos. Even though I think there's lots of experts on Latin American cartel gangs that say that tattoos aren't really a reliable identifier of anything. Our government's using some arbitrary point system they cooked up out of nowhere to claim somebody's MS-13. There's no proof this guy's MS-13.
finding was found and upheld on appeal he would be stopped from challenging that. Now that Trump has designated the guy, as MS-13 rather, to be a foreign terrorist organization, he's not eligible for withholding of removal anymore, so he'd simply have lost no matter what. And the second reason is that in the interim, between the time he got this withholding of removal and now, the 18th Street gang, which supposedly threatened his mother's pupusa shop, a preposterous story from the outset, that 18th Street gang is no longer effective in El Salvador, which was the basis for his supposed fear of persecution, which is why the withholding of removal was granted in the first place. So the outcome wouldn't have changed. This is what we would call, to analogize, harmless error. The second reason it's substantively just is because the guy's a wife-beating MS-13 gangbanger.
Yeah.
And who exploited our laws for 14 years. And in fact, the more that comes out about the guy, you're realizing, just what kind of person he is, threatening his wife and children, telling them that, you can't leave me because I'll kill you. Funny thing, I was reading a book about MS-13, and a different MS-13 gangbanger did the same thing about a girlfriend he was dating. There's this sort of underlying entitlement. But substantively just obviously a very bad dude, a human trafficker, the kind of person who drives people, from Texas to Maryland who don't have any luggage. Do you think those people have free will? No, those are captives. And, we can get more into that later.
And we will. There's one more man joining us tonight to make sure that there's a little bit of chaos and humor.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I like. Well, it's Primetime 99, and I just want to say, Pisco, you are very smart, but you're still a libtard. And, but no, I agree. I actually agree with you on this because this is, listen, whether it was unjust or not.
I think this is like man, the founding fathers were liberals. It's so weird how this term for people who've consistently, created the system by which we enjoy our rights to free speech, our rights to free society, our rights to free enterprise, our rights to privacy, right? Consistently, it's liberals, who free slaves. It's liberals who establish Social Security. It's liberals who give you clean air and clean water. And somehow that is still always the go-to slur du jour for people to stand pompously above them and argue we should just violate the law and deport people because we don't like them. Alex Stein is a provocateur, so I don't know how seriously I should take anything he says. But he's not, he's on the stage anyway.
We got the outcome that we want. His big booty Latina is staying in the country, and we need to do this as,
Oh, for those anyone curious, this would actually be why I wanted to react to this in the first place. So I only played the first 20-ish minutes or so. I didn't watch the full thing. But the big booty Latina thing is like a tell, right? That the way conservatives view this issue is as a frat boy would or a teenager would, right? That his priority is that his woman is a sex object, who's a mom, by the way, a mother to a family, right? This is a family being broken up. And he reduces her to just this object of lust with basically like no regard to how crude it's going to look. This is why women don't vote Republican, amongst the millions of other reasons. The taking away the right to choose would be a big one. But dude, this is a mother, right, whose family is being torn apart in real time while her husband is being smeared as a member of a violent gang, a violent El Salvadorian gang in a prison where he's, one, he's been deported without due process. Two, he's deported in the one place the court said you can't deport him. And three, there's no say about when he will ever be released. He hasn't been charged with a fucking crime. So this family's just been torn apart. And what does Alex Stein have to contribute to this conversation? Well, his wife's a big booty Latina, and we're going to keep her. His wife's a U.S. citizen, no less. I think Will Chamberlain mentions this, but it's degrading. Conservatives don't have anything meaningful to say about the immigration debate. They don't have anything to actually add. They treat it like it's fucking wrestling.
A lesson to these other gangbangers and Trinidad Arruga adjacent people that if you come to our country and you bring your big booty Latina, we're going to kick your ass out and keep her. So I think
Alex, the Latina in question is a U.S. citizen.
I know, but still, she's still a big booty Latina. I'm saying it doesn't matter.
I mean, if the goal is to protect the U.S. citizen Latina.
Alex Stein did not know this.
From the predations of the MS-13 gangbangers.
I'm saying protect even illegal or legal big booty Latinas. They carry the same weight in my eyes. So I guess not apparently to you. So I'm saying, yeah, she's a legal big booty Latina, but he learned his lesson. They don't get to go back to El Salvador or wherever you get kicked off to.
And that's exactly why Alex is here.
Yes.
But we are going to be bringing up members of the audience, people who have submitted who want to join this debate, and give you guys a chance to have your thoughts heard on this matter. But I suppose the question to kick it off, simply, to either of you who wants to start, was the deportation just or unjust?
It was unjust. It was illegal. Do you think that doing
Those aren't synonyms.
Wait, so
Those aren't.
so
Don't mean the same
I understand that, but in this context, do you think it was just for the Trump administration to do an illegal deportation? Yes or no?
I mean, in these circumstances, the outcome was just.
I'm asking if the deportation, if you think.
Well, I mean, it was mistaken, so they conceded that it's a mistake, right?
See, like I said, the conservative side is just going to, because their whole MO here is that they don't like immigrants and they don't want them here in the first place. So they're going to say the ends are going to justify the means. However, you got to get rid of these immigrants. That's what justice is. It doesn't matter if U.S. citizens are getting deported as well. Doesn't matter if people are being imprisoned in torture slave camps with like no due process. None of that matters. People who have never been convicted of a crime being kicked out of a country. People who are going to citizenship interviews to swear allegiance to the United States being deported. People who are being arrested for deportation for writing an opinion editorial in a newspaper. Does not matter. They start from the same position. It's only just if you kick out the people they want kicked out, right? They don't care about process. They don't care about law. They don't care about freedom or liberty. They don't care about anything that would actually make this country great. They just want the wrong people out, and they want to centralize power on themselves to inflict the maximum amount of punishment they can on those people.
So was it just to do a mistaken illegal deportation?
I mean, the actual substantive outcome here is a just outcome.
No.
It's like, I don't want the administration.
Whether the outcome was just or not, is
Right.
the action, the mistaken, in your words, mistaken illegal deportation just or not?
It's mildly unjust. I actually.
So
concede
you
that.
actually
There's a reason
agree,
I
to be
had the
clear,
resolution be
you
without
actually
it.
agree that it was unjust. To be clear, everyone here agrees it was unjust?
No.
Well, okay, so Tim, do you think that the deportation was just to do an illegal action?
See, what you're doing right there is I'm just going to say, that's not debating. To load the question with, I presume it was illegal first, now answer.
Do you
It's
agree it was illegal?
When did you start beating your wife?
The Supreme Court called it illegal. The Supreme Court said you have to effectuate this guy, or not effectuate, sorry, wrong verb, facilitate this guy's return. Supreme Court already ruled on this.
Well, do you agree it was illegal? What's loaded about that?
So the issue is it a crime to make a mistake?
Not a crime, it was illegal. Was it illegal, yes or no?
No.
9 justices on the Supreme Court unanimously, Will and I, both lawyers, will tell you it was illegal. Will, it was obviously
Yeah,
illegal.
no, it was an illegal deportation.
It was an illegal deportation.
So hold on. You're saying that it was illegal because the Supreme Court said it was?
No.
It's emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. That's Matt Marbury.
Does the Alien Enemies Act supersede?
He wasn't sued under the Alien Enemies Act, or wasn't deported under the Alien Enemies Act.
Stephen Miller claims he was.
No, he absolutely wasn't. He's not a Venezuelan. The proclamation for the Alien Enemies Act only applies to Venezuelans.
Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Say again.
Does the Alien Enemies Act apply to El Salvador?
The proclamation
Or
issued by the
MS-13?
president only to Trinidad members who are Venezuelans. By its terms, the proclamation by its terms, even assuming it were legal, would not apply to them.
Yeah, this is not an Alien Enemies Act question.
So the question is, do you agree it was illegal?
If the argument is the Supreme Court said it was illegal and that's your basis for it, then I agree with you. Yes.
Okay.
I don't even understand the Alien Enemies Act point. I don't think any court or the administration itself is trying to argue that the third branch of government here cannot review Alien Enemies Act deportations, right? Or anything under the Aliens Enemies Act. The Supreme Court already did. They said you had to provide some sort of due process for people who are going to be detained under this. You have to give them their habeas corpus, right? I don't understand what the point of this argument is. They don't want the courts to review it. That much is evident. They want a world where they have one central figure who gets to say who is and isn't a terrorist, who is and isn't a gang member, and who has the unilateral authority to kick that person out of the country. That should frighten freedom-loving Americans.
Do you agree with the president or the executive
The thing is, everybody agrees it's illegal.
Well, just to be clear.
No,
Not
I think
everybody
there's a lot
agrees.
of error. And the issue is we're talking about the semantics of what it means to be illegal, right? So is it illegal to smoke pot? Yes. Is it unjust? No. People can smoke pot if they fucking
Okay,
want.
so that's why I'm asking you first if it's illegal. Now you agree it is illegal. Fair, right?
In the context of which, so the first thing I was trying to do was understand your view and how you're viewing what illegal means. You're saying, as a subject of law, as the Supreme Court has ruled it, we all agree the Supreme Court did in fact say it was illegal.
Correct.
Agreed.
Okay, so if it's the case that you think that this deportation was illegal, do you think it was just for
Yes.
the Trump administration to do an illegal deportation?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like I think it's just for someone to smoke pot.
Okay, so if they did the same thing to a U.S. citizen, though, obviously you think it's unjust.
Yes.
Okay. If they killed Kilmar,
Just saying. It's happened to U.S. citizens, but oh, okay. Trump's already said homegrowns are next, right? Trump, homegrowns are next. You know, we haven't faced the golf tracker. Let's see how many days he spent. 21%. 1 out of every 5 days Donald Trump has spent golfing. Amazing. Trump, homegrowns are next. Where's that? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank God Tim Pool's got a moral compass, though.
Abrego Garcia, would you think it's unjust?
Yes.
Why's that?
Killing people is one of the worst crimes, in fact.
Okay,
Obama killed 4 American citizens. We fact checked this.
Wait, but you thought that was wrong, right?
Absolutely.
So then so if it's the case that you thought that was wrong, wouldn't it be wrong, for example, to put Gilmar Abrego Garcia in prison for the rest of his life without an opportunity to have a case?
No.
Okay.
So let me try this real quick. You're trying to equate, say, Barack Obama, right? He extrajudicially assassinated a 16-year-old kid without charge.
You know what? I kind of find these deflections, these diversionary deflections here, a little bit bad faith. Barack Obama did not intentionally target an American citizen, except in Anwar al-Awlaki, who was a member of Al-Qaeda, who was plotting attacks against the United States, right? Al-Awlaki's son was not a target, was killed in a car with other terrorist targets. Like, we were in war, unambiguously at war with these groups. We're not at war with Trinidad Agua or MS-13. That's just not the case. It doesn't matter how much Trump proclaims it, right? Congress authorized military action against these groups, against Al-Qaeda in particular. Congress made no such declarations authorizing military action against MS-13 or Trinidad Agua.
Trial. I mean, if a dude cracks a grandma over the head with a baseball bat and kills her, I say lock that guy up. If a guy accidentally runs a woman over, then we say that there could be negligent homicide. There's degrees of whether the crime is bad. Is it justice in some circumstances and not when a crime is... Not all crimes are solved in the same way.
I'm not alleging that it's a crime.
They all rise to the same level of retaliation.
I'm not alleging that it's a crime. I'm saying it's illegal, and the Supreme Court found that. And right now, what we have, this is what the Trump cult does to you. This is what the Trump cult does to you.
What's the ad hominem?
So this is what it does to you. You are
it's a
defending
fucking cult.
An illegal deportation of a human being who has the right to have his case heard. The basic essence of due process.
Finding is actually,
I mean, denied of anybody. It will be denied of you in the course of time.
No, it won't. He's not a citizen.
So if you're...
How'd you get your citizenship, Will? Birthright? Because Trump's got an executive order about that.
It was previously adjudicated as an MS-13 gang
That's
member.
false. And you brought it up too.
There was a finding that he was an MS-13.
So
absolutely.
You brought up collateral estoppel, didn't you?
Yeah. So he'll be stopped from challenging.
So of course not. So this. So I know, because I have to say, a lot of these lawyers file shipwrecked, and they get shipwrecked as a lawyer, and it's garbage. And the truth is, there is no collateral estoppel here. What is the finding that the bond court hearing made?
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
If someone does something illegal, is that just or unjust?
It's sometimes unjust, sometimes just. It depends.
If someone does something illegal, should they always be held under? No. Okay, so we agree that the real question here is not whether it's just or unjust, whether we think the penalty should be severe or not.
No. So I agree. Not all illegal things are unjust. I'm asking, in this case, is this illegal action by the Trump administration?
It's a big tell the way Tim Pool and co. really want to move off the central topic, right? To argue something else, to deconstruct this into a million different parts and say, well, what about Barack Obama and that time he drone struck a U.S. citizen, right? What about all these other instances? We're going to name a few. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but they don't want to talk the substance of the issue because they can't win on the substance of the issue. And the substance is the law is not being followed. The Supreme Court told Trump, you have to facilitate this guy's return. This guy, Gilmar Abrego Garcia, is not MS-13. He was deported without any real due process. He's a Maryland father, right? He's a resident who lives here, who works here. He hasn't committed a crime. His only crime was being in the country without the proper paperwork. And for that, he's been sent to what is essentially a tropical slave gulag. We need to talk about that and stop getting off topic.
Just or unjust? And you said it was just for the Trump administration to do an illegal deportation.
Now,
I'm going to ask you why. I'm going to ask you why.
Right. Let me answer that. So the first thing I got to say is you keep loading this as though illegal is the pretext by which something would be just or unjust, which is why I asked you: is if something is illegal, is it just or unjust?
It can be. It depends.
Then you don't need to say, am I okay? Why am I okay with Trump doing something illegal? The question is the deportation.
No, I do need it because I think as a standard, right? There's a threshold here that in the main, when the government does something illegal, we're going to presume it's unjust unless you can reach some threshold. Well, think about it, right? So if this can't just be a game of we let the government do whatever we want to people we don't like. We're fearful of the government wielding.
See, Pisco gets it. That's what these guys are arguing for. Centralized authority under Donald Trump, who is the sole arbiter of who is or is not a terrorist, who is or is not a gang member, with no review for the courts. And you have a chorus this cavalcade of fuck-ups all over Twitter and social media and in Trump's own circle saying he should just ignore what the courts are telling him. This is how you undo a democracy.
In power in the main because of structural reasons. There's a reason, for example, you believe that someone who's accused, for example, of should be given a trial, correct?
Yes.
Okay, why is it that, why do you think that someone who's so horrific, and if everyone agrees that this person, why should we give them a trial?
An American citizen gets a trial.
What about an illegal alien?
They don't.
So you don't think, so just to be clear, this is where we're at now. You don't think that crimes that are committed in this country by illegal immigrants, that they should have trials for those crimes? The penalty?
Well, no, they do have. Wait. To be honest, we do have trials for.
Hold on. So the penalty for an illegal immigrant typically is for most who cross within 2 years is expedited removal. That means their due process is an immigration officer will determine whether or not they're here legally.
No, that's a civil penalty for being in the country illegally. Tim Pool has no idea what he's talking about. If an illegal immigrant commits a crime, they have criminal penalties they can be subjected to. So it was a bit after this where I stopped watching to just start this over a stream. But there's this point here where Tim Pool's asked something to the effect of, like, if an illegal immigrant raped and murdered somebody, should they just be kicked out of the country and suffer nothing else? And he basically says, yeah, they shouldn't be tried. They should just, their punishment should be out of here. And then we'll solve it by securing the border, which is just like asinine. If I have a family member that's murdered by an illegal immigrant, first, I'm not even necessarily certain that's really all that different from a citizen murdering a family member, but let's just go ahead and say that. Let's commit to that. I have a family member who's murdered by an illegal immigrant. You're just going to kick him out of the country? No justice, no imprisonment, no terms imprisonment, no day in court, no chance for me to make an impact statement, no chance for the evidence to be seen, right, and examined. That's just totally without process, but okay.
Or illegally.
That's not what we're talking about crimes. We're talking about crimes.
And yeah, so when we get someone here who, like, or murder somebody, why are we going to spend taxpayer dollars when the outcome is going to be you get sent out of the country?
Well,
no matter what happens?
Tim, so actually, a lot of times, we deal with this. We want them to be prosecuted so that they actually face a punishment instead of getting deported. So that is, we actually spend a lot of taxpayer resources on prosecuting illegal immigrants, at least in Texas.
But like, I just want to dwell here for a second. The Constitution says that persons in this country get trials if they are accused of a crime before they're punished. No, it does not say that. You can read the Constitution.
Well, let's clarify the fact. Does it say citizens or persons?
So for example, there's different parts.
Let me ask you this though: in the case of Abrego Garcia, do you think that is a sweeping policy that's being used to deport mass amount of people, or is this
what is a sweeping policy?
Well, I'm just saying the pretext.
It was a sweep. It was the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act that was used to deport 200-something people in violation of a judge's orders. The judge said, if you got planes in the air, you need to turn that shit around. Trump still deported all these people anyway.
That we use to deport Abrego Garcia. I'm saying, do you think that is being used right now to deport a massive amount of people, or is this an isolated incident in your opinion?
I don't think it's an isolated incident. I don't think it's relevant to the question presented, which has to do with his. But I will answer it.
Well, I'm just saying, a few. When you make an omelet, a few eggs are going to get, cracked. I'm just saying there are going to. It sucks. How
then just bite the bullet and say, yes, it was unjust. Of course, it was unjust. We don't want the government in the main unless there's exceedingly like crazy circumstances to violate the Constitution, right?
Pisco, real quick, but do you think it's going to be used in a massive way?
It already is. It already is.
But who else? What are the examples do we have? I know you talk about the cancer girl. But they actually were allowed to stay. So when leftists say that they were forced to leave, they chose to go with their family. They were 100% allowed to stay in America. So we didn't deport a cancer person.
If you guys are stuck in your echo.
Yeah, we did. What, allowed to stay? The cancer girl was allowed to stay. Like the option was like they had to stay. I remember reading about this. Tom Homan. I need to find that quote. But there's this quote where Tom Homan where he talks about, like, no, we don't need to separate families. We just need to deport the kids as well, or something to that effect. Fuck, where's this? The broader story. Her whole shtick is she's got cancer. She's a U.S. citizen, clear as day, who's on her way to Houston to get some follow-up treatment for her fucking brain cancer or something like that. Absolutely no regards paid to this, right? No, that's not the right. That's not even the right story. Where's the U.S. citizen? This one. Family was deported to Mexico hopes they can find a way to return to the U.S. and ensure their 10-year-old daughter, who is a U.S. citizen, could continue her brain cancer treatment. Immigration authorities removed the girl and 4 of her American siblings from Texas on February 4th when they deported their undocumented parents. Family's ordeal began last month when they were rushing from Rio Grande City, where they lived. So this is in the Valley. If you're not in Texas, maybe you don't know. To Houston, where their daughter specialist doctors are based for an emergency medical checkup. Valley area is like border. Parents had done the trip at least 5 other times in the past, passing through immigration checkpoint every time without any issues, according to attorney. Blah, 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 blah. Parents showed letters from their doctors and lawyers to the officers at the checkpoint to get through. But in early February, the letters were not enough. When they were stopped at the checkpoint, they were arrested after the parents were unable to show legal immigration documentation. The mother, who spoke exclusively to NBC News, says she tried explaining her daughter's circumstances to the officers, but they weren't interested in hearing that. I'm not surprised. Other than lacking valid immigration status in the U.S., the parents have no criminal history. And this is how do they get that? Right? Every time I read, there was a Facebook story I read as well. Oh, did I open this story? It was this one. Yeah, so this one, I read this story just to read the comments, and it's loaded with trash. Like, well, they had all the, firstly, this 19-year-old had all this time to fix it so they could get legal status. There's no mechanism for getting legal status. It's not like you show up at this building and you fill out this paperwork and bam, you went from illegal to legal, right? Our immigration law doesn't allow for that. When people talk about a pathway to citizenship, this is what they're talking about. There's no pathway for these people to actually get legalized. So what you end up with is some really fucked shit where you have somebody who's basically a child, brought into this country as a child, and getting deported from the only home they'd ever really known for the imaginary crime of the wrong paperwork. Like, this kid's lived here for pretty much her whole life. Since she was 4, right? You know? What? I don't think a 19-year-old, I'm trying to think where I was at 19, I wouldn't even know, like, even if there was a mechanism for getting legal status, what that would be. It's a tale that we never tell people how we can get them legal status. There's no alternative given to people. It's just straight to deportation. Anyway, where's that brain cancer kid? Other than lacking valid immigration status in the U.S., parents have no criminal history. That's because lacking immigration status in the U.S. is actually a civil offense, not a criminal offense. Crossing the border, at an unauthorized checkpoint, or at a crossing point, that is a criminal offense, but it's a misdemeanor crime. And none of these people are charged with that. There's no way to prove that's what they even did. U.S. Customs, you find somebody for deportation. If you want to claim they've committed some crime to get here, like, how are you going to prove? How are you going to prove them wrong, or how are you going to prove they crossed illegally? Just being here illegally is not itself proof. I came through and they just let us through Border Patrol checkpoint. They were rushed. They weren't paying attention. They just said go. Shit happens all the time. But whatever. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which detained and deported the family, according to the lawyer, said in an email Wednesday. For privacy reasons, we did not comment on individual cases. Oh, that's nice of them. For privacy reasons. Trump White House lawn signs, illegal immigrants. For privacy reasons. For privacy reasons. You know whose mugshot's not displayed here on the White? This is like a disgraceful use of the White House, by the by. Well, I can think of one felon who's not there. Oh my god, we're on a whole immigration deep dive today, aren't we? On Thursday, the CBP spokesperson said via email that the reports of the family situation are inaccurate because when someone is given expedited removal orders and chooses to disregard them, they will face the consequences. They reiterated they couldn't speak out the specifics of this case for privacy reasons. 10-year-old girl is diagnosed with brain cancer last year and underwent surgery to remove the tumors. God, I'm sick. Sorry. Woke up with this huge knot in my throat. I think it's a consequence of these storms or this windy semi-rain we've been having the past few days. Yeah, so this is to Alex Stein's thing. This kid had the option to stay. The 2-year-old had the option, or not 2-year-old, the 10-year-old with brain cancer had the option to stay in like the U.S. foster care system, right? Stay without her family. I think that was the issue. Our answer to immigration going forward just cannot be only enforcement and only deportations. We need a better resolution.
Chambers, and again, I think that there's some of that going on here.
Insult the audience like that.
So
Give me a break.
if it's that case, then you wouldn't know, for example, that this U.S. citizen, there's a parent here. There's an opportunity that people have basic due process rights to see if, like, I don't know, an aunt wants to care for the U.S. citizen, or another parent has parental rights and the right to have custody over the parent or the child.
In the instance you're referring to, the mother requested the child.
So I don't know which case. There are multiple cases of U.S.
There's
citizen
two.
immigration. One of which the mother denies that's what the outcome that she wanted. But regardless, just the policy that we're talking about is with respect to people who are not citizens here. And you asked if it's like a mass policy. They're already by the Supreme Court, again, unanimously saying that these people are entitled to due process. You guys don't think that. You guys don't think that there should be due process.
I don't think that's
Everyone thinks they're entitled to due process. The question is what process is due, and it's extraordinarily limited in the context of legal
but Tim just said, even in the context of criminal. So Tim just said, in the context of a criminal indictment, that there should not be trials for people who are here illegally. You don't agree with that?
No, I don't.
Hold on. This is a really good example for media literacy. What he did is he is falsely framing the arguments, redirecting it. What I'm saying is, there is no trial required for a crime committed by an illegal immigrant because they'll get an expedited removal before a trial can take place.
You're conflating an immigration hearing, which is civil, and I agree. There's no. So you guys don't get confused, all right? I'm gonna teach you something.
I'm not conflating anything.
Immigration law and a removal proceeding is not a criminal matter. Okay, that's different than the criminal proceeding. Yes, I agree. You don't need trials. That's why J.D. Vance is full of shit. I
gotta stop you. You are actually making a mistake. I am aware you are asking for a criminal trial for, let's say, an illegal immigrant who committed a murder. Mm-hmm. I am arguing that we will deport that person back to their home country, and then we're not going to hold a trial for him after the fact.
So wait. So you're gonna take a murderer.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to respond to this.
You're not gonna subject him to punishment in this country, and you're gonna send the murderer back to El Salvador just so he can cross the border again and murder someone?
Well, that's why Trump has CCOT, doesn't he?
Hang on.
What's your plan for the next 30 years, genius? Like, this isn't a solution for anything.
That wasn't embedded in your hypothetical there, that he would go to CCOT.
You presented information to the argument that was...
Conservatives are only ever capable of thinking in, like, real short-term sprints. It's so frustrating. All our long-term issues never get resolved. Healthcare, never resolved, right? Immigration, never resolved. Climate change, never resolved. All these different issues we have that we need long-term fixes for, they never have a solution for any of them because they can't think of anything more than a week ahead at a fucking time, right? Our answer to immigration cannot just be in perpetuity. We're going to suspend habeas corpus. We're going to deport American citizens. We're going to sell. No, not even sell. We're going to buy a slave prison, encampment for immigrants. We're going to invoke, 18th century wartime law. This can't be the answer in perpetuity, right? This is not a way. This is not how the wealthiest, most powerful country in the world resolves its issues. I'm reminded of this Ezra Klein quote about Donald Trump that I really like. Donald Trump governs like a king because he's too weak to govern like a president. That's very evident in the way he treats deportations, because everything he wants to do is to, anytime he's told no, he lashes out. He toys with disobeying the law or suspending parts of the law, suspending due process, or just ignoring what the courts say. In fact, his administration is already being investigated for criminal contempt for violating a court order. So this is just, it's just not how a country needs to resolve this issue. But Tim Pool falls into the same empty pit I think all these other MAGA types do, where they're very, very afraid of an ever-expanding, changing world, and they don't have solutions except through violence. So they embrace violence, right? We're going to use the apparatus of the state to, instead of solving an issue that could just be solved with paperwork, right? If your issue is really that these immigrants are here illegally, just make it so that this can be solved with paperwork. Sign this document, now you're here legally, now we have documentation of you, right? Just do that. They don't want that. They don't want immigrants here in the first place. They don't care about the legality of it. They don't like immigrants.
Was not previously included in it.
Which was
the
what?
argument is an illegal immigrant here gets deported first.
before he goes to trial for murder. Come on, guys.
How do
He's
you
going
go
to
to
trial for
trial
murder.
for someone who's not in the country?
Wait, so we do. This is high priority for our government to spend money on trials protecting U.S. citizens, and it's one of our our common things. Guess what?
Actually, hold on. Let me give a hypothetical to Tim real quick, though. Tim, this is where I think you're wrong. I'm sorry. So, would you have rather had Laken Riley's murder just deported, or are you happy that they had a trial and got convicted?
Deported.
That's crazy. So you trust you trust this
I
El
disagree with
Salvadorian
that,
guy?
yeah.
Wait. Just be clear. You trust
but I'm
you trust
happy
El
that he's
Salvador to
getting
keep this guy in jail? This guy committed a crime on U.S. soil, and you trust El Salvador? You trust El Salvador? Yeah. Here's the problem. What happens if Bukele decides this guy goes free? What happens if they overthrow Bukele?
I got it, guys. I figured it out. We secure our border.
So in this country, there's justice for crimes, and what you're talking about is injustice. It's for the purposes of expediting something, but it's not true justice. For example,
I actually disagree with you. I think what you're saying isn't justice, because what you are doing is creating a defense for people who had no right to be here in the first place, so that taxpayers have to spend money on someone who's not going to be here after this. And if you look at the case of Abrego Garcia, this guy. What was the due process that was failed? He was supposed to get what's called a USCIS official interview.
False.
To make it, this is under the law. This is actually the
You're
law.
wrong.
It's in the law.
8 CFR.
I don't have my phone on me.
So 8 CFR to
The withholding of
24
deportation
sub
law
08
states that if an individual receives a USCIS interview that determines the circumstances of their home country has changed, they can be deported. Withholding is void.
8 CFR 224, look it up. So you go to sub F on that statute, or it's a regulation. It is not the province of USCIS to determine whether someone's going to be,
You have to go back to the immigration judge.
Yeah, you have to go to IJ judge. You have to go to immigration judge.
No.
It would be
Pull up the
immaterial.
law on withholding of deportation, which explicitly states that a USCIS interview can determine that the circumstance of their home country has changed. I don't have my phone on me.
That's affirmatively. We're talking. So this is the problem. This is defensive relief. And so in the immigration context, you can apply affirmatively to USCIS,
Right.
or you can put before an EOIR
Then I'll say
judge.
this. I concede. Let's bring him back, and the first thing that happens when he walks in the door is turn
So
back
I
around.
just want to be sure. You concede that it was unjust and he should be brought back and then put in removal proceedings?
No.
This concession is evident of what I said at the beginning of this, that they don't have any position to argue on the merits of the case, not on the law, not on the substance, no due process. Their position is, let's just deport people. So he's conceding just so we can get to this resolution that, well, we're just going to deport him anyway. And thereby miss the whole point.
No. Stop playing games.
That's what you just said.
Stop playing games. I am saying, for the sake of arguments, I will no contest your argument and say the end
That's
result.
pussy shit. Don't no contest an argument.
that's
Actually,
good.
let's take the argument.
That's you engaging in semantics to change the argument I
That's
made.
pussy shit. Why don't you actually engage with the argument? Why don't you actually engage with the argument and not say, oh, I don't know, because I'm backed into a corner. Now I'm just going to say I don't really care.
What this guy does is he plays semantic games with the ideas being presented so that he can try and finagle out of when he's backed into a corner.
So how am I backed into? So I understand the proposition to be,
Because
is the deportation unjust?
Wait.
I understand the proposition to
The
be.
end result of Abrego Garcia's return to this country is immediate expedited removal.
So
What the f*** is the point?
So I
Waste our
heard.
fucking time.
So I just want to be clear. I understood.
If you're gonna, you could apply this logic to so many different things, right? If found guilty of this murder, then it's just going to be straight to, he's just going to get the death penalty. We'll just summary execution people. Let's take him out back and shoot him in the back of the head, sort of thing. They don't have any regard for what the law is. They don't care.
The proposition. I understood the proposition that you laid. I listened very carefully. Said, is it just and should it be brought back? And you just said, okay, I guess he should be. It wasn't just. He should be brought back.
The point is, it's called a moot point when you're
the debate
arguing something
proposition
that's
is a moot point?
immaterial to the end result of what we're trying to
The debate
accomplish.
proposition is a moot point. I just want to hear you say
You see,
that.
you're playing semantic games again. You're
We're
playing
not. I thought
semantic
this.
games
I
again.
also heard everyone else said this is debate. Come to the arena debate. You guys are coping. You know,
We are
bite
debating.
the bullet. Bite the bullet.
Can I say something? Can I say something?
let's get
I supposedly am debating here, right? I don't even remember that was supposed to happen. So the resolution was
All right,
supposed
let him talk.
The resolution was supposed to be, is the deportation profoundly unjust, right? And there's a reason for that adverb, right? It's because there is a mild injustice that happens whenever the law is not followed, right? So, unless there is like some dramatic reason to not follow the law in a particular instance, there's usually a mild injustice. I think that the more interesting, and the funny thing is the Trump administration has conceded to this since the beginning of the filings, right? The Trump administration conceded from the outset that this was administrative error, that they should have gotten the withholding of removal lifted before they removed him to El Salvador. I don't think that's the most interesting question, because it's a question that like even the Trump administration agrees to for the most part. I think the question is this a profound injustice? And I think the answer to that is obviously no, for the reasons I laid out at the beginning, right? I think I'd like to.
The Trump administration has violated court orders to bring this guy back. That's a profound injustice.
actually hear your argument for why this is a profound injustice and not merely a mild one.
And I want to make one little point, though, Pisco. When it comes to Abrego Garcia, and I personally think this is an isolated incident, but even if you are right, I'll concede that I think, I ideologically, even though you and I are different on this subject, I do feel like that he didn't get his, due process. But, and I had to debate this on college campuses, it is hard. But in this instance with Abrego Garcia, I think it's isolated, and I don't think that it's a massive problem. That's what I think about this, but I do concede.
They go entwine. This question is who really cares, right? Who really cares? One guy, whatever.
Well, it's kind of like you're George Floyd. They're making this guy to be like a hero, and it's one incident, and it's bad, but he's not a hero, and he still, beat his wife. So it just kind of sucks that even though you are right in this instance,
It's also kind of gross how his wife's been weaponized against him when his wife is saying that's absolutely not true. The whole issue with the wife's seeking out of some sort of protective order, restraining order, was because they'd been having relationship issues, and she was worried that it might escalate as it had with a previous relationship she'd been in, right? She outright said, he's never laid a finger on me. But this is, of course, going to be the argument du jour, because if you can't argue on the merits, attack the person.
I don't want to be like the left because they say that the means, the ends justify the means, and I don't want to be like that. I don't want to break the law to get the outcome that we want.
So I want to be clear. I'm going to give you a hot take. This is worse than the George Floyd situation. This is worse than the George Floyd situation, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, wow. Yeah, ones in the chat. In the chat.
I don't know from what perspective that could possibly be right. It doesn't matter how you come down on George Floyd. The valence of George Floyd is bigger on either side.
So I understand. So I take the assumption.
Let him talk. Let him talk, guys.
And I do believe that George Floyd was murdered. I watched that entire trial. I think it's clear that they're
fentanyl. Okay, go ahead. But let's let him say.
Yeah, no, you should listen to the pulmonary cardiologist, his testimony. Yeah.
Let him talk. Let's hear this. Yeah. He's about to make a good point. So I'm interested in this.
So this is why I do think that even though there's a history of cop violence, not just on black people, on people of all races, whatever, and it's a problem in the United States. I think that it doesn't present the same kind of civilizational problems that are presented by what the Trump administration is doing here. What they're trying to do here is put people outside of the contours of U.S. law. We have prisons in the United States. We have prisons in the United States for the worst of the worst. We spend money on it. The reason why we need to send them to Sicat or to El Salvador is quite simply because Trump doesn't want to be hemmed in by the law. And that when the president of the United States, when the strongest person in the country is saying things like, for example, I want to do this to U.S. criminals. I want to use it for U.S. citizens. I believe him. I believe that he wants to do that.
How about this, Pisco? You and I both know Guantanamo Bay. There are people that are being held there without due process. We're not losing sleep over that. I don't see the left, and that was done by Obama. Kept that when he said he can't.
I lose sleep over that.
Campaigned, I'm going to shut down Guantanamo Bay. Yet he still.
He was wrong.
Derek Chauvin did nothing.
Also, Obama tried to shut down. He actually put an order for it, and then Congress wrote a law. Basically said they put it in the budget. It basically said no, you can't close it. That it's got to stay open. So what he ended up doing was transferring out a bunch of prisoners. God, it's such a pain in the ass to respond to these points because there's so much more to it. And it takes so much more time to disprove what could be, a lie that carries so much baggage so quickly. It's just one little line, and now I'm sent down this rabbit hole about Barack Obama. It's the same with the Anwar al-Awlaki thing, where if you don't know the context, Obama killed an American citizen, and that's just the way you react, and there's nothing deeper than that. That's where the story ends for you. And it's the same with this. Obama said he would shut down Guantanamo Bay, then he didn't. And that's where the story ends. Obama, he's a liar. And it's just not the same thing. It's just not the same thing. Right? But, okay.
Wrong, and he is held unjustly.
That's wrong. That's wrong. But that's wrong. But let's just. I want to ask you guys, if Trump sends U.S. citizens abroad to Sicat, you'd have a problem with that, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't know about that. As a different form instead of using a U.S. prison.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's any different than our private prison industry. That's a scam. To send them to a prison.
Because they're out of the reach of judicial review, Alex. Because they're out of the reach of judicial review.
Danger.
Yeah. So
this is the danger.
God, these people are dumb.
Trump is selling. Trump is testing.
And we got 2 minutes left, and then we're about to get into the debate. So go ahead.
Trump is testing this theory, and he's telling you in advance he wants to apply it to U.S. citizens. And just like Obama, one of the things I respect about Tim Pool is he's aware of the kinds of violations that occurred under Rumsfeld, under the neocons, under Barack Obama, under Trump term 1, and that very same rationale that applied to Guantanamo Bay, that applied to the deprivations of due process in Abu Ghraib, surely that applies to Trump version 2. And I don't see a kind of exceptional circumstance in this case that would justify breaking the law.
Well, before we go to the members, Will, do you want to take the last point?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I think the argument that this is ultimately going to lead to U.S. citizens' deportation is just a really bad slippery slope argument. I don't think that's true. I think that there's so many other remedies that are available to U.S. citizens that it's not going to happen. I think that
You want to send U.S. citizens to safe dock? Well, who decides? Who decides? That's the question. Do we just trust Trump and his Kash Patel to say who the terrorists are?
Why? I mean, let's assume they are terrorists. Let's assume it's Osama bin Laden himself. Why send him to CCOT? What are American prisons so weak they cannot contain this person? What's the issue? What's the fear? Now, I know under the Bush administration, the big fear was, these people would have access to our lawyers and therefore have access to our judicial system so they could appeal for their rights. Which tells you about how the Bush administration felt about your civil liberties. That seems to be what this guy's arguing too. He has so little regard for civil liberties. He has so little regard for due process. He has so little regard for the Bill of Rights, and he has so little regard for the Constitution that he wants to take people he doesn't like and put them in Constitution-free zones.
Yeah, Pisco, with any sort of prison, I mean, there's levels of crime or decide.
But there's also levels of review, right? So
there is levels of
one
review.
One of the reasons why Tim, I think, in good faith, is against the death penalty is he understands the propensity for courts, yes, even courts with full review, to get shit wrong sometimes. In this case, I think that you should be fearful of a purely executive discretion on who is a terrorist sufficient to make a big hole in due process.
See, and here's where I want to make one last point, right? And this is why I think the slippery slope argument is bad. It'd be one thing if the Trump administration was hiding that it had made this administrative error from the beginning, but from the outset, from the very first filing in court, from the first declaration, the Trump administration was like, we made a mistake. It was an administrative error. He should have had his withholding and removal lifted. So, he didn't fire the guy who made the declaration, right? He made the, he fired the attorney.
They suspended the guy who admitted it, and
they suspended the attorney, but not
and
the
Stephen Miller is saying it was a mistake. Stephen Miller's lying about the Supreme Court decision, and you agree that Trump could get him back if he wanted to.
I mean, I think he could. I just don't. I think it's beyond the judicial power to order.
Whether it's beyond the judicial power to order, since you said it was unjust, why wouldn't you want him to right the wrong that you acknowledge?
Here's how I would have him do that, right? Like, and one of two ways. Either a Zoom hearing or a hearing in the American Embassy in San Salvador, right? You resolve the problem. You resolve the problem by just having the hearing to lift the withholding of removal.
But the Supreme Court said facilitate his release from custody in El Salvador.
Yeah, they said that, and it's like I think they're acting on a rush basis. They haven't been very clear about what they mean by facilitate, and neither is Judge Zinnes, frankly. So I think the solution here is whatever. While they're litigating what exactly facilitate means in this context, you just go ahead and handle the withholding of removal issue. He's going to lose on it,
and he's not. First of all, I just want to address that real quick because I want to address the issues of collateral estoppel and the issues in issue preclusion. That's a legal term of art, but for the lawyers who are eventually going to watch this, the bond hearing is only related to the issue of whether or not he's in the moment a danger to the community. It's not a finding of the court that is able to apply and have binding precedent on any other determination. Furthermore, the basic contours of due process and collateral estoppel require there to be vigorous process where the issues were really held. They didn't have the opportunity to cross-examine any of the witnesses. An anonymous witness on two forms, one of which is like blatantly wrong and contradictory. They said they picked him up for murder, and so the issue of collateral estoppel, there's no collateral estoppel.
I mean, I think in the context of an immigration proceeding, I think it would, you can't suddenly take a criminal standard.
Okay, that's 30 minutes, but we'll let you wrap
Thank you,
it
guys.
up.
So, and then just the second issue of withholding, it's clear under the regulations and under the due process clause, you are allowed to bring up, if just as the burden of the proof is going to be on the government to show that the country conditions have changed, so that Barrio 18 is like no longer a threat because Bukele is just Superman or whatever, he's going to have additional opportunities to argue other withholding arguments, one of which is now that he's been identified by Bukele by name, he has a very strong argument that he's going to be actually a target of persecution by Bukele and the administration in the state, which I think is actually a stronger argument than the Barrio 18 argument.
Let's roll.
All right, guys, now let's get it on. That was our introductory debate. You guys kind of got your palate, Well, now we need the palate cleanse. You got your little taste of what tonight's going to be about. So, guys, what's going to happen is we're going to pick people up. We're going to kind of mix it up. So first,
that's 30 minutes in, and we're more or less where I said we would be the first time, which is to say that they didn't address the substance of anything. They didn't talk about the law. They didn't talk about judicial review. They pushed away issues of what the courts have already ruled, and they just resolved on the exact same thing. We need to deport people.
we're going to start with Donnie Dossie. But Donnie, what's going to happen is you're going to come up here. You're going to get a minute uninterrupted to talk about whatever prompt you want. We have this prompt. We're just going to use your because you're the first one. And then after you make that argument, then you're going to come up here, and that's when we're going to have the back and forth dialogue. So you got 1 minute, and then, hopefully just give us your best 1 minute elevator pitch on your topic and why you think you're right. Then you get the 4 minutes back and forth. You get to freaking argue with the most famous
guy on YouTube.
And if we like you, stay. But
if you suck, I'll kick you out.
If I suck, I suck.
And yeah, so your 1 minute starts. Let me get the timer out. So we
Just
can
go for it. He'll start it.
Yeah, ready, set, debate, or say your topic.
So this withholding of removal thing that I keep hearing about. Granted, I admit I'm not a lawyer or anything. I also, I didn't actually read the Supreme Court ruling or anything. But my understanding of the withholding of removal is this makes it illegal for them to have deported Garcia to El Salvador. It did not grant him permanent residency within the United States, and it also did not outlaw ability to deport him to another country. So I'm kind of confused on where the confusion. Okay, I get it. A mistake was made. He was accidentally deported to El Salvador. So what happens from that point? We go ahead and we bring him back. How do we bring him back? What if Bukele isn't willing to relinquish him to us? How do we go about getting him back? Are we supposed to send in the military and go take him by force and bring him back here just so that way we can detain him and deport him again anyways? None of that makes sense to me.
Yeah!
That's kind of my point.
All right,
Well, come on up, and then we can tell you why you're wrong.
I mean, that's my position too, mostly. So nice to meet you.
Well, let's roll. I mean, what was
Sure.
wrong?
Happy to. First of all, thank you guys. I know that we disagree on stuff, but I really appreciate y'all coming here. I think it's a really important topic, due process, and so I think it's awesome.
If I could say real quick, kudos to you, man.
Thank you.
Big balls. Come up here, go up against these three, and an entire room of people that are opposing you. That's strong.
Okay, you don't need to kiss his ass.
No, I
Let's
appreciate
go.
it. So I think the first, I'm going to deal in reverse order. The first thing is well, how can we actually get that done? I think everyone, if they're being honest with themselves, because you guys are honest people, should admit that Trump could, if he wanted to, get Kilmar Garcia back. He recently, as this week, said he could get him back. So we believe in terms of practicality, the president of the United States could get him back, right?
I mean, I concede he could because he does have a lot of sway, and Bukele.
So you
wants
agree
to
with
work
that,
him.
right?
He wants to work with him, but then at the same time, this also keeps Bukele in the spotlight.
Yeah, I
And
know.
he likes being in the spotlight.
But let's not talk about questions of could. Let's talk about questions of should, because I don't really think that you can make a strong argument that he couldn't.
I don't really think
Actually-
that he needs to waste his time on it.
Well, hang on, I just want to give Will an opportunity.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think my point is that there's Article 2 prerogatives that he actually does need to protect. And so in a world where Article 3 is sort of in this vague game of trying to order him to return him,
This is
I
a
would
good point.
say no.
So I want to give Will his credit, because it is the case. There are, as the Supreme Court held, limits, Article 3 limits on their ability to infringe on the Article 2 prerogatives. And I agree with some of these. If the Supreme Court said to Trump, hey, you have to go send in spec ops to take this guy out, I would think that that's unconstitutional for them to order that. So I do agree that there are some limits here. But that's a question of whether the court can order the remedy, not a question about what Trump could do.
Well, no, because there's an odd element to this too, and I think that you're alighting. The odd argument is that in a world where the Supreme Court is attempting to encroach on his power with vague orders, and Trump accedes to it, that sets a precedent for what the court can do going forward. And so, I mean, and since we're in this area of core Article 2 power, why I think I think Trump should do, as I said, I think the remedy here is this hearing in El Salvador. But I think Trump should resist any sort of attempt to say, oh, you're ordering me to negotiate with the Salvadoran government to bring him back. I'm not going to do that until you give that up.
We also need to address what it means to what the phrase "could bring him back" means, and this would mean that Trump would need to negotiate with Bukele to some degree. And I also believe it's fair to say that while Trump could bring him back, the resistance is going to be tremendous. Bukele is going to have to concede to his nation, I have released an MS-13 gang member because I was pressured by a foreign country.
That's right.
So
Correct.
Trump could
Also
get
a
him
good
back,
point.
but Trump's going to have to come in
We can't
here's
do
what
that.
we'll give you, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. Things that the Supreme Court can't order him to guarantee.
Bukele has 90% approval in El Salvador? I've had a client from El Salvador before, and I want to underplay the
Because
problem of
he's
gang.
hard on him.
What's that?
Because he's hard on crime. He's hard on gang.
So I want to be clear. My client that I once had, he was absolutely a victim to the gang violence. It was endemic, and it was just unlivable in El Salvador. So I don't want to underplay the degree to which gang violence matters. It absolutely does. But he is not. His approval rating, is to the max. The notion that he would face some kind of humongous
At the
pushback-
very second that he softens on that, his approval rating is going to go down.
You don't think he's okay, we gave it back because we want to make a relation with the president? That's not going to affect his approval rating. It's going to come on, this is all a joke. If Trump wanted him back,
Pisco, I want to do some Socratic dialogue with
go
you
for it,
because you did a lot
Yes, I
earlier.
did, yes.
So let's do some Socratic dialogue. Imagine a different hypothetical. Let's imagine a world where the United States had an illegal member of La Cosa Nostra in detention.
Yep.
And somehow he had managed to acquire withholding removal from an immigration judge. Maybe that information got hidden about him being in La Cosa Nostra or whatever. Okay, got a withholding removal to Italy.
So like Italy, yeah.
Okay, the Italy hypothetical. And then,
That's 4 minutes, Donnie.
Any final thoughts before
Yeah,
we
but
go?
Donnie, you spent a minute of it kissing Pisco's ass.
I shouldn't be kissing his ass. I was just trying to talk about, I'm impressed that he got up here, but at the
I
same
respect
time,
it.
he's
Well,
wrong
we're impressed
all
that
around.
you're here,
That's
too.
where I'm at.
But I do agree. I do tremendously respect you being here, man. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we do appreciate it. Okay, now, guys, obviously, no, thank you, Donnie. Great job. And so, guys, you're going to be able to come up here. So try to interject a little bit. I know, Donnie, it's tough being the first one, so don't beat yourself up. You actually did a good job. Thank you. You're the virgin. We just, you took our virginity. So thank you. So, Well, Alex Jones, we're about to get into Alex Jones, but it's funny because we're getting heckled by, let's be real, guys, this is a sausage fest, you know, I mean, it is. But we do have a few ladies here. So next up, I want one of those beautiful ladies from the audience to come on down. So do we have a lady that wants to come up here? Do we have a lady? Yeah, come on. Come on. Yes, come on, get up there. You have to come up, yeah. If you're here, guys, you're susceptible to being chosen and get up there. So just say anything. Just come up for a minute. If you suck for the minute, you get kicked off. You don't have a choice. Just come up here. Don't be scared. You're gonna go viral.
Bro.
You got Tim Pool.
Little rapey.
Let's try. Let's just a second
Oh
time.
my gosh. Okay, well, if you're gonna be a chicken, Bach. Well, look, listen. You know, you came here. You put on that dress. You wanted to be seen. Let's see it.
Let's grab who we have.
All right. So, all right. Let's go with somebody that's different. Is
Like, bro, chill the fuck out. She said no. She said she doesn't want it. Damn.
here? We got a in the audience. No. Okay.
He wanted to be here.
What about? Do we have a in the audience? All right. No. What about a? Do we have a in the audience? None of that. Is there anybody that's liberal or, you know, has a different viewpoint than us that wants to come up here?
Well, it's different, but it's...
Okay, well then you come up here. What's your name?
Stork is what people call it.
Stork. Okay. Did you submit? Did you do an official submission? Okay, I'll find it. So,
Well, go for it.
you got your
let him deal the timer and let's see what you got.
Yeah, if I can get it in before he gets the timer going. Okay, so I believe he is slightly wrong. I believe you are mostly correct. And I believe all of this is a fact that they denied him his Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial when he was denied essentially all of the processing that would have been needed when he had the stay of deportation. So he should have been sent to another place. In addition,
Not entirely sure this is the issue, but whatever. He's going on a fun thing.
to that, most of immigration is actually screwed up because we have not filed a writ of mandamus against the federal government for not processing all of these people who are stuck in immigration limbo for 8, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they should be doing their job and getting them the hell out of the country.
I think.
Come on down. Take a seat.
come on down.
I mean, yeah, I don't.
take a seat.
Sixth Amendment doesn't apply. It's not
I
a
don't
criminal
think the Sixth
punishment.
Amendment applies.
So it's not a Sixth Amendment issue.
Because it's a civil amendment.
And you can't get rid of mandamus. Well, number one is these judges are executive branch officials. So
You can get a federal writ of
you sure
mandamus.
can't get rid of the mandamus against executive branch officials, but you know, right now they're all under Trump, and so you know, if
Yes.
Trump could just order them to do whatever you want the writ of mandamus to do,
That's
and-
democracy.
Yeah, but like, so all I mean is to say is, I think that this is properly understood as a due process issue.
If the writ of mandamus was actually filed under the previous administration, then they would be obligated to do what it is they need to do.
That sounds like it's the Article 3 judges encroaching on the executive branch prerogatives.
Yeah, I think that actually, and in this context, it probably would be because we actually, you know, this is. Like, I agree. Yeah, there's an Article 2 prerogative to manage immigration and enforce immigration laws. You can fail to enforce to such a degree that it would be like mandamusable by somebody, but then there's all sorts of like other
I
questions.
want to cut a deal real quick.
Is there? I actually don't know, but at the time of the construction of our country, we didn't actually have an immigration or nationality law. And I believe immigration and nationality laws themselves fall under the purview of Congress. The president's just there to enforce it. I don't think that means it's outside the scope of judicial review, but okay.
Good Democrats. I will advocate for the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to this country for his hearing if we also simultaneously get a hearing on the extrajudicial assassinations Barack Obama committed.
Wait, let's talk about that.
The same thing actually.
So-
So, writ of mandamus for.
So let's talk about that, because
sorry.
you might think, and I understand this point. Like, first of all, he was a U.S. citizen, right? That's number one, and he was killed. Al-Awlaki, right? Is that what you're talking about?
So Anwar al-Awlaki is a great example, but Abdul Rahman is a better example.
Okay.
Abdul
Talk about that case.
Abdul Rahman is was a 16-year-old American citizen, was not a part of any terror organizations. The Obama administration ordered a drone strike on a civilian cafe in Yemen, a country we're not at war with, blowing it up, killing a bunch of people, including him, and they've admitted to it. I would like, I don't think you necessarily disagree with me. That's why I said Democrats. I'm not directing at you. I know that if I went to Democratic politicians and said, you see this as an injustice, I believe that in the end the courts will prevail as it pertains to Abrego Garcia. So I'm willing to say, okay, let's spend that money, but you got to give me something.
Yeah,
Let's have justice. Obama goes to prisons.
The only reason that I would say that's a problem is I believe there's a statute of limitations on what it is you can file a writ of mandamus for. And
Is there a statute of limitations on murder?
I don't think there is in this case, but when you're talking about military actions or something like that, there may.
But he's not talking about specific writ. He's just saying in general.
A writ of mandamus, you sue the government essentially for inaction, and that's what the problem is. We have to.
But he's not
force
talking
them
about a particular remedy. He's saying, I'm willing to publicly support X in exchange for Democrats
Sorry.
giving
Yeah,
them.
and so I will also concede there's probably, and you guys are lawyers probably know this better than me, some kind of immunity Obama has where he's going to say, this was a military strike with intelligence. We didn't intend to kill an American, but we did. So he may have some immunity from criminal prosecution.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to win a.
No,
No, that's
I don't
fine.
a
I
judge's
think
gonna
you can
entertain
still
this.
get wrongful death or something like that.
I mean, he probably has like a.
The
President has absolutely. I mean, you would have like a civil suit against the government.
You
as
could.
such.
Well, they tried it.
Unfortunately, I don't know if he has
Well-
any surviving family members left because they also killed them.
Indeed. No, but my argument in the long form is actually impeach him, convict him, and then
Impeachment's to remove from office. You can't impeach somebody who's already left office, Tim.
Now that he's no longer immune,
but the court has already, so in the Trump versus United States case, which I totally disagree with.
Hold on.
Yeah, but,
Impeach him first.
Yeah.
Convict him in the impeachment.
Yeah.
Which he's no longer immune to the murder.
So the Supreme Court specifically rejected that impeachment judgment clause argument in Trump versus United States. So there's a couple arguments. So one was the inherent structure of the Constitution makes it that you have certain degrees of absolute immunity for core executive acts that are part of your core executive powers. But there was an argument additionally that Trump said that, well, I'm not immune under those theories, or alternatively, I'm immune until you impeach and remove me. That's under the impeachment judgment clause. But the Supreme Court unanimously held that that was not the case. So you don't need to impeach someone to trigger criminal immunity and remove them. That's been rejected. But it's a good question. Would I support a hearing that looks at the executive power and its use on U.S. citizens when they get killed? Absolutely.
All right, that's 4 minutes. So Stork, thank you. Anything
you.
you want to say before you go? All right, well, all right, give it up for Stork. Now, guys, when you come up, you got 1 minute. Make sure to get on the mic. Okay, now this next guy.
Why don't we just have them, if we don't know, like some people didn't show up, why don't we have them raise their hands and then see who is prepared to come on?
Okay, well, I know this guy's here because this guy's insane. I love this guy. No. I want to call up David Tiny Flora. So, David, come on down. Tiny, it's your turn. Come on down, Tiny.
Is the rest of this just going to be audience shit? I mean, I can watch, but for the no names, I'm not sure I'm going to be getting much out of it. The debate itself was... I mean, maybe I'll watch a little bit more, but the debate itself was a bit of a disappointment. Pisco is arguing that you have to follow the law, you have to follow due process, and they're basically saying no.
Tiny, come on. Yeah, give it up for Tiny. He's not exactly that tiny, I'll tell you that much. The man's huge. He's built like a damn refrigerator. Look at him. Come in here, sir. Now get up on that mic. You know how to get up on things. Come on. We want to hear you. Maybe make it taller.
You can pick the mic up and take it with you.
Damn. All right, you got 1 minute.
Get up on that thing for you, Alex. $20.
No, I'm not gay. I don't play that way. Maybe Pisco.
$20, bro.
Yeah, well, I'm worth a lot more. I'm a pimp on a blam, dude. You know what I mean? I don't need $20. But let's, you got 1 minute. What do you want to say, Tiny?
All right, so what I want to discuss, you guys actually touched on it briefly.
Sorry, you can just get close to the mic.
Yeah, hold on.
So what I want to discuss, and you guys actually talked about it or touched on it briefly, was actually the, I guess, sale of U.S. citizens to private prison industry in the United States, and how that would be any different than selling U.S. citizens to CCOT, for example. I believe that there's already a precedent that's set in the United States where we do pass or sell inmates along, from my personal knowledge working as a corrections officer for a few years, and I believe that it would be as simple as creating a territory or creating CCOT, creating a territory within CCOT that is ran by the BOP.
I think it's a wonderful question.
All right,
and so
sit down.
for those who didn't hear, he asked, what about the comparison to private prisons, the fact that we outsource and contract private entities to take on the responsibilities of the government, specifically with incarceration of individuals, both of,
I don't think this is as good a question as he does. The big issue with CCOT is it's outside of the review, the jurisdiction of the United States. So courts can't look at it if abuses are happening, and Trump wants to deport American citizens there. But we'll see what Pisco's got to say.
for crimes and immigration.
Wait, but Pisco, I want to say, I'm more surprised that a guy with prison tattoos is that eloquent. I mean, I
Very
can't
eloquent.
believe that. Where did that?
Where
Where did you come
Sorry,
from?
I'm seeing those.
So he's got the skull cane, he's got the marijuana leaf. I mean, man, dude,
That's so funny.
that's gangster.
That's the
as hell.
M, right?
It's a great question.
The underside's actually the fireman's prayer.
Oh,
that's wonderful.
How about that?
Yeah, but you do have a weed flower on your arm, though,
True,
right?
that's the M.
Most
That's the
definitely.
M.
Yeah, that's it. And talk into the mic. We want to hear you, Tiny. Okay, your clock starts
Yes,
now.
sir.
So yeah, go
It's a
ahead. Sorry,
fantastic
Pisco.
thing to say, because I think it's all force. It's exactly the comparison. Bukele is being used as a contractor, and that plays into my argument and the argument of the plaintiffs, which is Bukele is not exercising the sovereign power of El Salvador by keeping Abrego Garcia in detention. He is being contracted by the U.S. government to hold him. Now, I know there's
That's
an
just
argument.
not true,
There's an
though.
argument that, like, oh, they're only paying money for the Venezuelans. That's all a fugazi. It's all a lie. You know, obviously he's working at the behest of the U.S.
Hold
government.
on, more Socratic dialogue.
Go for it. Go for it.
If under normal circumstances Joe Biden had sent back a Salvadoran gang member,
Yep.
illegal alien, to Bukele, right? And say there was some financial arrangement even between Bukele, not necessarily related to this particular person, but there was a financial arrangement. Is then suddenly, if there's some problem, is he able to demand that he be sent back to the United States?
So I think that there's an existing contractual relationship, an existing constructive custody, you would argue, that this person is continually, it's not like one and done event. It's why is this person in, I don't actually think he's in Sikot anymore. I think they transferred him someplace else. But why is he in custody in the first place? Is he being in custody because he's being charged with a crime by Bukele? Is he being, why is he in fact in prison? And the truth is, or in wherever he is, it's because he's acting at the behest of America. And everyone kind of knows it. And the fact that we all kind of acknowledge.
Well,
I don't think that's true
I
at
have
all.
a question for you, Pisco. What is the legal process for imprisoning someone in El Salvador?
I don't know. What is that process?
Me
It
neither.
seems very.
We don't know.
Why you're bringing up a foreign country's criminal justice system for their own citizens?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the internal domestic process in El Salvador?
Yes.
Yeah, it's at the whims of the dictator.
So, are there other dictators that you're concerned about in other parts of the world
100% I am. Yes,
that
I
you
am.
don't frequently debate about?
question
Well,
is that?
I don't frequently debate about it when it.
I don't think we have to be so
relates to
chauvinist to assume that every country's, process system being different, especially El Salvador, which has had 30 years of gang violence, for them to be like, no, sorry, you have gang tattoos, you're going to jail.
But I don't even think we need to argue that, because I think that there is a moral worldview difference between us.
But that's what we did. That's what we did. We looked at Kilmar Abrego Garcia, saw his tattoos, and said that means MS-13. Donald Trump literally believes he has MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles because somebody put MS-13 in Microsoft Paint. Like, dog, we already do that.
And I don't mean this disrespectfully in that my view is, hey, we're America. We take care of America. If El Salvador's being shitty, I mean, that's El Salvador. And this guy's their citizen in their country. If they decide to put him in prison, that's not our fucking problem.
Yeah, but you're ignoring the process of how he got there and how. Yeah,
it's so. Again, if you know.
It isn't worth arguing process with them. They don't care. I think the more substantive question would be like, what if they killed him, right? And Tim Pool's already said like, oh, no, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. That seems to be a real possibility in the CCOT prison, that people have been killed in CCOT by prison guards, that they treat their prisoners brutally. These are places of tortures and forced disappearances. And Donald Trump wants to send Americans there, which I don't know that I've heard Tim Pool cry much about that. If his response to this is saying, well, that's not our problem, just keep adding numbers to this. Like, let's say we send 50 people there and they all die. Our problem? No. People we're sending there, by the way. Let's say it's 100 people. Let's say it's 1,000 people. And at some point, we're just exporting people for murder. He has to have better values than not our problem. That's just a lazy way out.
I asked this of Christy Noem, can we just give him his hearing and be done with it, because we know that in the end we are correct? And her response was, it's out of our jurisdiction now anyway.
So I have a question to kind of bring it back to what we were discussing here, right? I think we kind of went a little further.
Sure.
So we already run programs very similar here in the United States, like with the 187G program. Sheriff Chuck Jenkins up in Frederick County, Maryland, has been running that for many years now and has been very successful prior to the Trump
in the United States, right?
Very correct.
I agree.
But my point is, those inmates, he is being compensated by the United States government to house them in a special wing. His deputies are deputized as federal marshals or federal agents. Why would it be any different if we rented out a wing in CCOT and sent inmates there? No differently than what we do now.
Well, two things. One is, I think that your description of that relationship is completely correct. I think that's exactly what's happening with Bukele there, in the sense that, yes, the U.S. government is contracting a party to enforce immigration law. But the reason why it's different is the deprivation for which due process applies is the physical removal from the country. And so when you deport him to another place, you've now done the deprivation for which there is due process. And so that's my answer to that is, in theory, I guess I wouldn't have a problem with the law of contracting like some foreigner. I don't like it, but legally I don't know if that's a problem.
That's your time.
I just want to point out real quick, this guy right here is a Maryland man with knuckle tattoos.
Yeah. What do you do for a living, Tiny?
Okay, audience member number 3. Is this worth going through all of these? Holy shit. I don't know that they're saying anything much of substance. This just feels like kind of like a Twitter debate.
In Pandora's box, and I would just say I think Pandora's box has been opened pretty darn widely, So,
all right, Cash, you got the mic. The floor is yours.
All right, guys. Good morning, everyone here. I am a libtard. I think I'm one of the only ones in the room.
Oh my gosh, somebody to argue with me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Pisco, for inviting
He
me.
needs it, of course. Oh yeah, that's right.
Grab the mic and hold it up so we can hear you.
Why do we call ourselves this in rooms full of conservatives? When we do it, it's a term of endearment. When they do it, they actually think we're retarded, which is funny. Like, what? I wish we'd just avoid the placated animosity we have towards each other. Like, fuck, these people hate you, dude, and you should hate them back. They're fucking evil.
So I'm an American exceptionalist. I love this country. I love this Constitution. I think Pisco brought up this point. I can read out like the amendment that says that people have the rights to due process, regardless if you are a illegal or a citizen. I think that just needs to be cleared up first. That Pisco is the pro-Constitution person here. Every single person, I heard them screaming in the room saying illegal immigrants don't get due process. That is against the Constitution. Just to clarify that first. Second of all, I also think it's important to acknowledge that I trust the U.S. government more so with processing someone that we'd all agree is probably a bad guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, than some random prison in El Salvador.
Why are you giving up this ground? We don't agree with that, right? That's kind of the issue. He has no criminal conviction. Why do we agree that he's a bad guy? Like, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we want them to like us? These people will never like you. Stop giving them this ground. We have no idea if Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a bad guy. In fact, we got a lot of evidence to suggest he's actually a pretty good guy.
I think we have a good justice system, as many of you guys might disagree. It's crazy to me that you guys disagree with the 6 Republican Supreme Court justices that said that we need to facilitate his return. Rule of law is very important in this country. And I don't know what you guys would be saying. I think Pisco hinted at this. If AOC becomes president and all of a sudden says that the January 6ers are a bigger threat to this country than the illegal immigrants, then deports them with no due process, you guys will all be crying your asses
100%
out.
true. Base.
They'd be crying like bitches.
That already happened.
Bullshit. All those people got trials. Everyone in the J6. And then
They all got due process. All of them got due process.
And then these criminal terrorist insurrectionist thugs got let out by the criminal in the Oval Office right now, illegally occupying the office.
I would just like to ask.
See, Pisco's got the right point, right? Don't placate these fucking people. The guy in the Oval Office right now is a convicted felon. For the first time in our history, we elected a convicted felon to be our president. And the very first thing he did was pardon a bunch of people who attacked police officers in service to him getting another term that he lost, throwing out the votes, throwing out the democratic process, and installing himself as dictator. You can't let these people try to stand on some high moral ground about what the law says. They don't give a shit about the law, and if they did, they would not have elected a felon. They would not be cheerleading the mass pardoning of 1,500 violent felons who attacked law enforcement. All these people do is apologize for crimes. All these people do is break the law. All these people do. Like, it's wild to me. Black Lives Matter, their issue with Black Lives Matter is that it's led by black people. It's not the riots. They didn't give a shit about people breaking the law when it came to the Bundy Ranch standoff. You had people pointing firearms at law enforcement. They didn't give a shit about that. Just like they don't give a shit about any of the crimes of the 2020 election.
Ask a procedural question to our lawyer friends here. If evidence is denied to the accused parties, is that due process?
Yeah, it wasn't denied. It would be a violation of due process. But it wasn't actually.
That's not what I asked.
It wasn't actually denied.
That's not what I asked.
Whether the evidence is admissible, right?
So it would depend if it's admissible. It's a whole doctrine on Brady that would apply, and so I would need to know the specific facts. And also, I'm not an expert on Brady.
So what did we have? 44,000 hours of footage. Not that.
This was a lie, and this was denied on the merits in the courts. So no.
That's not enough.
No. Go for it, Will.
Okay, the actual real, the best argument about the failure of due process in the J6 cases was the fact that change of venue motions got denied. Yeah. There's no excuse that any of these trials happened in D.C.
where the crime was committed
in a 97% Democratic
district. Who the fuck cares? You do the crime in a place, you do the time there. You do the trial there.
I thought you...
Where the crime was committed. You can't just say, well, there's a lot of Democrats there, so they can't get a fair trial. That argument doesn't fly. In the voir dire process, they don't ask if you're a Democrat or a Republican, and if they did, there's no way that would be a mistrial so fast. The question is, where did the crime happen? It happened in Washington, D.C. Falls under their court system.
You cared about fair trials.
Wait. So,
what did that happen?
Whoa.
It's a white guy. You don't want a fair trial anymore, do you?
So doesn't the Constitution specify? Doesn't the Constitution specify that there is a venue provision that when you commit a crime, it shall be tried in the district in which it was committed?
Yeah, but that venue is not defeated by due process and the right to a fair trial.
So there's a presumption. There's a presumption that a jury is able to put aside their bias, their political bias.
Yeah, but that presumption's not absolute. What happens if a black defendant is facing a jury of all white and the prosecutor's excluding?
It's a high burden to get rid of that jury.
I don't know. I mean, well, think about this. Whoa.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm saying it's a high burden to show that it's racially, unconstitutional.
I mean, you see, if you look at the polling, I want to make this point because this is, I think, the key issue, which I think liberals have lied all the time. You look at the polling on, for example, whether liberal parents would be happy if their child came home with a conservative partner to marry. They're not. And in fact, in general, this number is higher than in a world where, than cross-racial. So, I mean, I'm sorry, the way that there's polarization in this country between Republicans and Democrats, which is literally demonstrated by this room, and also a lot of,
Is he going to argue that they should have been tried by Republican jurors? Certainly, that's not what he's trying to argue.
Things said about the people in this room is demonstrating that there's not a jury of your peers and the J6ers didn't get fair trials.
Let me ask you another question. Is it due process if the prosecution uses information from after the trial happened to seek a greater sentence on the individual based on speech of the individual?
No, why would it
not necessarily?
That is not.
It gets to whether or not you have regret, whether or not you. There are factors of sentencing that you're able to, the judge has discretion to weigh.
Your speech.
That aren't. Yes. So, for example, I'll give you a case like Martin Shkreli. You guys know Martin Shkreli?
Of course, yes.
So Shkreli, and this is actually, I think Shkreli can be funny sometimes, but he talked shit about Hillary Clinton when he had his trial or something, and then the judge sentenced him more. Now you might disagree with that, but it just is the case that judges are allowed a great deal of discretion in sentencing, and that's our system.
Okay, can I introduce kind of a new topic a little bit because I feel like we're gonna dug down the.
Yeah, you got less than a minute though. Go ahead.
Let's give him time.
We haven't had a liberal yet. The entire night.
That's what I'm saying. We'll talk. Hey, Cash, say something, bro. Gosh, like a bump on
I
the
think
wall.
that Pisco hinted at, and I was kind of talking about this in my opening speech, is that what's important to recognize here is that it sets a precedent. These laws set a bad precedent. I think we should also talk about Mahmoud Khalil. I go to Georgetown. There was a guy that was in our grad department that got deported for supporting Palestine, literally just for supporting Palestine. I just want to hear the conservatives here that if AOC gets elected and designates Israel as a terrorist state and starts supporting a bunch of pro-Israel people, I'm Jewish, I'm pro-Israel, I'd be afraid of that. You conservatives have opened the floodgates
100%.
for free speech to be completely violated because Trump is breaking these laws.
I will
it
answer
takes
this.
It takes two to tango with these laws.
I will answer your point. If you manage to get AOC to be president, and she, in her bizarre wisdom, not wisdom, right? But if she decides to say, you know what, if we think the IDF is a terrorist organization, you manage to classify it as such, and then you say Israelis who advocated on behalf of the IDF, she would have the authority to do so under our laws. She could deport Israelis.
She has authority to give them due process.
Wait, bro. So I would argue that a large, I don't know the exact numbers, but the Trump base is split between anti-interventionist, bye-bye Israel, and pro-Israel. There's a lot of people who are pro-Israel, but when the argument you make about the conservatives, you're going to find a lot of them are more like conservatarian, being like, yeah, I don't give a shit about Israel.
That's his point. He's trying to.
They're not going to disagree. They're going to cheer you on.
No, we're engaging in a hypothetical.
Here's my point.
Wait.
I guess the fundamental answer is I'm happy with the Khalil deportation. The guy hates our country. He's a guest. He can go home. Sorry, you want to go out there and be.
What is the basis of this claim? Mahmoud Khalil hates our country. There's no basis for this claim. Just like it's the same with he's a Hamas sympathizer. They just make shit up.
I think people that rioted the Capitol hate this country more than someone criticizing foreign policy. All the people on green card that destroyed the Capitol should be deported immediately. That is the same category. Hating this country. Hating this country. Some of them are not citizens that destroyed the Capitol.
I got a question for Will. You said he's a guest in our country.
Oh, Will.
Yeah.
Wait. He's a guest in our country. He hates our country, so we could deport him.
Yes.
And that is. The State Department has the discretion just to say, we revoke your visa. Is there a specific criteria by which you think they're required, or do you think it's unilateral? No, you're a guest, get the fuck out.
Under law, honestly, the Secretary of State, there's a provision that was used in this case, which is the Secretary of State said, this guy's continued presence in the country is damaging to American foreign policy.
That is very vague. AOC's president. Just quickly say,
sure, I understand that you're slow, but I just think that's the law.
President AOC in 2029 says, Steven Crowder, you are a guest in this country, get the fuck out.
True. See, he's a citizen, so that doesn't
Viva
matter.
Fry.
Steven Crowder's on green card.
Viva Fry?
Viva
Fry, get to start enjoying poutine again, because he's got to go back. I said he's got to enjoy poutine again, because he's got to go back to Canada.
All right,
I guess this is just a boring debate. I wanted to respond from the first bit I watched, where Tim Pool basically says, I don't care if any illegal immigrant commits a crime. They should just be deported. They don't even need a trial. Just kick them out of the country, even if it's murder or something like that. I guess I was expecting a little bit more substance out of it, but if it's just the audience question, this audience dude asked a good question, but I don't want to just keep shuffling around the nobodies with their. See an Alex Stein. Ugh. Okay. U.S. citizen child recovering from brain cancer deported. Family with 2 U.S. citizen children deported after ICE traffic stop. To Trump administration deport U.S. citizen children. Yes. And then there's the floating of deporting American citizens. By the by, after trying to repeal birthright citizenship. And we'll have the same refrain from people who are saying, citizens get rights and non-citizens don't. After your birthright citizenship is revoked, is the Trump administration going to just deport you too? It's worth an ask. 4-minute listen. Let's listen.
His administration is looking at whether it can detain U.S. citizens involved in criminal activity and then send them to prisons overseas. NPR's Brian Mann talked to some legal experts who fear the White House is preparing to move ahead with that plan, even though they say jailing Americans overseas is unconstitutional.
When President Trump appeared this week alongside El Salvador's leader Nayib Bukele, Trump could be heard making a prediction.
Homegrowns are next. The homegrowns. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah.
Homegrowns are next, Trump says, referring to U.S. citizens, before suggesting Bukele needs to build more prisons in his country to house Americans. El Salvador is already holding hundreds of people in a maximum security prison who were detained in the U.S. for allegedly lacking legal status or having gang affiliations. Critics say many of those individuals were deported with limited or no due process. In one case, a federal judge ruled Wednesday there's probable cause the U.S. acted in criminal contempt of a court ruling. This proposal to send Americans to El Salvador has drawn condemnation from many legal experts.
It's obviously unconstitutional, obviously illegal.
David Beers at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank, he worries the Trump administration could move forward with this proposal even if courts and judges object.
The real fear that we have now is that he is going to try to evade judicial review of deportations of U.S. citizens.
Not everyone is voicing opposition to this idea. NPR contacted 3 prominent conservative legal scholars and 3 conservative legal think tanks. All declined to comment or didn't respond. On Monday, Trump said he's ordered U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi to explore whether sending Americans to El Salvador might be a legal way to cut costs. He also suggested U.S. citizens could be deported to additional countries, which Trump didn't name.
We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying.
During an appearance Monday on the Fox News show Jesse Watters Prime Time, Attorney General Bondi was asked about Trump's proposal.
These are Americans who he is saying who have committed the most heinous crimes in our country. And crime is going to decrease dramatically because he has given us a directive to make America safe again.
The U.S. has incarcerated American citizens before in ways that challenge.
Crime rates, 30-year low. Yes, it is true that U.S. crime rates have been at a 30-year low. Both violent and property crime rates have been significantly reduced, with some declines exceeding 50% since the early 1990s. Decline has been observed by the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics and the FBI. I love this canard. Crime has just consistently gone down, 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 down. And the Trump administration still continues to just try to scare the pants off people. They have to govern by crime.
Or violated constitutional norms, including the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II and the detention of Jose Padilla, an American citizen imprisoned for years without trial after being accused of terrorism in 2002. But most legal experts interviewed for this story said deporting Americans to spend time in foreign jails is alarming, especially at a time when Trump frequently describes many of his political opponents as criminals and enemies of the nation. Lauren Brooke Eisen with the Brennan Center's Justice Program, a progressive think tank at New York University, described the idea as illegal and morally wrong.
There are profound ethical questions that this would signal about how we treat human beings who are U.S. citizens.
In a legal opinion published last week, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor said the Trump administration's recent legal argument suggests the U.S. government already believes it can, quote, deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens. Lawrence Tribe, a Harvard professor of constitutional law, called Sotomayor's opinion a warning.
What that means is that literally any of us, whether we are immigrants or not, is vulnerable to basically being kidnapped by masked agents of the United States government.
As the Trump administration weighs this proposal, some Democrats have voiced opposition. NPR couldn't find instances where GOP leaders reacted publicly to the idea of jailing Americans overseas. We reached out to top Republicans in the House and Senate asking for comment. They didn't respond. Brian Mann, NPR News.
Live from NPR News.
That's a tell. It should be mortifying to you that basically 50% of this country would be fine with the idea of deporting U.S. citizens to El Salvadorian gulags or CCOT. saw this thing recently. Trump planning deportations to Libya, which I think got put on the kibosh. Yeah. Judge was like, you cannot just deport. Libya's like actively in a civil war. They have like a travel restriction for Americans right now. It says, hey, don't go here, right? We can't protect you if you go here. U.S. judge in Boston ordered a temporary block on the Trump administration's plan to deport migrants to Libya, saying it would clearly violate a prior order he made that ensures their right to due process. The order came after 2 U.S. officials told BBC partners, CBS News, that the U.S. may soon start deporting migrants to Libya as part of its crackdown on immigration. You've cracked down. It's cracked. In response to the deportations report, Libyan Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Biebe, I don't know, wrote in a statement on X that his country refused to be a destination for deportation of migrants under any pretext. Wait, did we even talk with Libyans? I don't remember. State Department won't discuss it. Real transparent, this administration, this is. Officials who spoke to CBS, who requested anonymity, said the U.S. military could fly migrants to the North African country as early as this week. Are we just going to, like, strap a parachute on them or what? Like, if Libya says we're not allowed, we're not doing it, how are we going to do it? It was likely to spark controversy. Libya's been mired in conflict for more than a decade, and the U.S. State Department advises Americans not to travel there due to factors like crime, terrorism, and civil unrest. Immigration lawyers moved quickly on Wednesday to prevent the Trump administration from carrying out the deportations, asking a Massachusetts judge to urgently issue a temporary block. Multiple credible sources report that flights are preparing to immediately deport the United States carrying class members for removal to Libya. U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy in Boston responded late on Wednesday afternoon by issuing an order that restricts the Trump administration's ability to quickly deport migrants. In his ruling, Judge Murphy said the deportations blatantly defy an injunction he'd previously issued that protects the due process rights of migrants subject to final deportation orders. So he's already ruled on this once. That earlier ruling requires officials to provide migrants with a written notice in their language and a meaningful opportunity to file a claim to protect them from removal. Asked whether he was aware of the plan to deport migrants to Libya, President Donald Trump said on Wednesday, I don't know. You'll have to ask Homeland Security. Bro, you're the head of the government. How do you never know? How does he never know? How does he never know what's going on? He's like, I got to ask the lawyers. The lawyers might know. Oh, you got to ask the State Department. You ask Homeland Security. Dude, you're the president. Does nobody talk to you? They're supposed to give you briefings every morning. Okay, Libya is thought to be one of several countries asked to accept migrant deportations by Trump's administration. This week, Rwanda confirmed it was in the early stages of talks with the U.S. Oh, another beacon of human rights, Rwanda. While Benin, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Eswatini, and Moldova have all been named in media reports. That's just terrifying. Why aren't we deporting these people to their home countries? Like, what's the rationale behind just dumping them in Libya? Oh shit, it's a divided government. So if you've got 2 different agencies or 2 different Libyas, essentially, I guess this would still qualify as part of that civil war. I guess civil war technically hasn't ended. It's been a while since I looked into it. But if you've got an East and a West Libya under different controls from different regimes, are we really going to negotiate with the one with questionable legitimacy? Haftar summit U.S. officials in Washington, State Department. Okay, was not about deportations. Well, that's assuring. I wonder what it was about. Since returning to office in January, President Trump has launched a mass deportation campaign, at times relying on controversial tactics such as the invocation of centuries-old wartime law. Okay. Well, shit. God, I'm sick as hell. Yeah, I think the real concern about this was just 2 days ago. Man, time moves so weird when Trump is president. It's just terrifying. It's like people don't take this seriously. What's terrifying about all of this is the speed. the things that would normally cause giant red flags to go up don't. Donald Trump comes in office and he violates a court order, right? He sends people to a prison with a well-known reputation to torturing and killing people, used as to enforce disappearances of people, and a court tells him you cannot deport people there, and he deports people there anyway. And then he says, we're going to revoke birthright citizenship. And then he says, we're going to deport the homegrown citizens next, the homegrown criminals. They're going to the Salvadorian gulag next. Then he tries to deport people to Libya, a war zone, no less, full of terrorism. And he regularly talks about immigrants, you know, in dehumanizing ways. And half this country talks about immigrants in dehumanizing ways. Trump's whole base urges President Trump to just violate court orders that restrain his ability to just summarily deport people. And the word terrorist and gang member or traitor are thrown around so casually as if they mean nothing. You know, these judges are traitors. We should arrest these judges. We should deport these judges next. It's insane how quickly we've devolved into a country of vindictive, violent, and undemocratic modes of thought. We don't care about the rule of law anymore. We don't care about due process. We don't care about the normal course of governing affairs. Like this administration doesn't behave like a president ought to behave. You know, there was this. Oh, which agency was it? Was it FEMA? FEMA had recorded. I'll ruin you. One of Trump's appointees. I think it was FEMA. One of Trump's appointees. Yeah. You know, it's like, dude, has an all hands on deck meeting with FEMA. And this is what he says to them. Like, he's not coming in to lead the agency in some part of, you know, as part of this broader shared mission of protecting Americans. This is just revenge politics. And it seems very clear to me that a lot of these appointees are using their appointments to these government positions as step ladders to get some sort of power centralized on them in the future. Kash Patel has absolutely no qualifications for the position he's in. Lyndon McMahon, no qualifications for the position she's in. RFK Jr., no qualifications for the position he's in. You know, Pete Hegseth, absolutely no qualifications for the position he's in. You know, it just seems like this is a kakistocracy full through and through. So the things that should terrify people for some reason just aren't. And it feels like as we chip away at all of the norms, they kind of used to make this country a stable, great place. We chip at it day by day. We lose more of our freedoms day by day. We're slower to react to it, way slower than we should be. The president declares a phony emergency to issue tariffs that basically crash the U.S. economy and slide us towards a recession. All right, we're already in our first quarter of negative GDP growth, which for some reason we're just accepting as, oh, that's Biden's fault. Biden was posting like 3%. We had GDP growth under Biden. It seems very obvious that this is a consequence of the tariffs. There's no emergency to justify these powers. There's no invasion to justify the Alien Enemies Act. There is no mechanism by which you can just revoke birthright citizenship through an executive order. All of these things the administration is trying to do, they're trying to do through dictator powers because they don't have the ability to do it democratically. That should be a terrifying fact to people. It should terrify Trumples, except that we share a completely and fundamentally different vision of what America should be. They don't believe in a land of freedom and opportunity. They certainly don't believe in a land of equality. I shudder to even call them Christian nationalists. I imagine, firstly, I don't think Jesus Christ himself would be a nationalist, but everything they do is un-Christ-like. The ways they talk about people are un-Christ-like. The ways they behave are un-Christ-like. I don't imagine Jesus Christ would look at people being deported who've done no crime whatsoever and just be okay with it and say, yeah, attaboy, Donald, keep going. For what little I know of Jesus Christ. He said, judge not lest ye be judged. He said, let those without sins cast first stones, right? And everybody who keeps bringing up, well, he was okay with state action. He said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. You know, that's about taxes, right? You want to say that's an endorsement of the state? That's fine. I don't think Jesus Christ would endorse an authoritarian state. His message was interpersonal. It was about what you can do for each other. Clearly, the Trump administration does not behave in a Christian way. Alright, I'm at like 0 viewers and I'm sick of shit. So I thought I could stream like maybe 2 to 3 hours at minimum, and I was gonna do a research stream after this, but I don't have it in me. I'm sick of shit, so I'm gonna go lay down. Good luck.